to talk about African-American history, voting rights history in this country, anything that kind of moved this country forward, any movement that you can name, without talking about HBCUs, their students and their communities, right? They are a national treasure that, to be honest, in my opinion, has been disrespected, right? They're through, whether it be funding or just the way that people talk about them, as if, you know, they're a charity case. And in a lot of real ways, HBCUs are the lifeblood of this country. And they should be talked about in the same breath as you would talk about an Ivy League school, right? They're a bunch of the same qualities. Students choose to go to HBCUs because of family legacy, because of amazing top-notch programs, because of very tight-knit alumni networks. And they do it from all over the country. It's the same reason that people choose Ivy League schools, right? When you see the name of an HBCU on a resume, it means something, right? If you went to an HBCU and you see the name of an HBCU on a resume, that person is getting an interview, right? Like their resume might not match what the job description is, but we saw that you went to an HBCU, so you're getting an interview, right? We're gonna make sure that that process happens, right? And it's important to like understand that as a thing. Okay, we ready? Oh, we were already ready. Hey friends, how you doing? Glad you're there. Not gonna forget that you're there. And so with that said, I kind of wanted to give you that as like a level setting. One of the other things that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned, I know that we did a land acknowledgement earlier, right? But I walked on the campus here today. Never been to UVA before, but I got this like really eerie feeling as soon as I walked on campus. And then Devon, who works in the student affairs department, told me a little bit about what's actually going on this campus, right? And you guys are nodding your head, so you already know the punchline. And so I think that it's important that we acknowledge like the enslaved labor that happened to build this place, and making sure that like you understood that, like, and I felt that as soon as I walked onto the campus, that history is still here and very rich, even in the Rotunda area, right? Where like slave quarters are still like kept, you know what I'm saying? And it's not to suggest you should get rid of those things. It's just important that people should know that they're there, right? That, you know, this was a place that was built by slave labor, maintained by that. And just as important as a land acknowledgement is, the labor acknowledgement is also important. And so with that, I'm going to stop talking a little bit and let my panelists come up. You guys can give them a round of applause as they come. Right there. Cool. All right. And so I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourself, do your thing, tell people who you are, how come you're so dope, why you're sitting right here, that kind of thing.
Hi, my name is Bleu Cousar. I'm a second-year political science major at the Bleu Cousar from Concord, North Carolina, and I attend UP.
Hi guys, my name is Aaliyah Picchon. I'm a graduating senior political science major, leadership studies minor on the pre-law track from Dallas, Texas, and I also attend here.
So one of the things you should know about Hampton University, right, is one, it's to tell you that they're the real HU. And this is that correct?
Yes.
They're the real HU. Who's there? Does anybody know who the other HU is?
The vice president.
Did you say what?
There.
Howard?
Yes.
There you go. Howard is the other HU. It's the other one. It's not the real one.
Not the real one.
Except if Howard is in the room, in which case I'm bipartisan. You know what I mean? And so one of the things that you should know about that institution is their involvement in the civil rights movement is very well documented. All right, and the people who have graduated from that place. One of the most notable is after the North Carolina A&T 4 from Greensboro, the same thing happened in Virginia. And that was led by Hampton University students. At that time, they were called the Hampton Institute. And they were the first ones to do a sit-in Virginia, period. right? And so it's kind of a big deal. It's a little known nugget, right? And I'm gonna say this about like the civil rights movement so that we can level set a bit. Civil rights movement is almost inextricably tied to like voting, right? But it is important for you to think about the civil rights movement as a human dignity movement, right? That was less about voting, more about human dignity and becoming full citizens, right? And the work that students do today, especially Black students, are tied more to human dignity than to voting. Does that make sense? All right, cool. And so now I'm gonna ask a question. Y'all did? All right, so let's roll into that first question. And so like, what's like the difference in your engagement from high school to college? Like, what did you know about voting in high school versus like what you experienced about voting in college, and like how did you get into what you're into now?
Okay. So like I said, I'm from Dallas, Texas, but that was kind of a little bit of a lie. I'm actually from Roy City, Texas, but nobody knows where that is because it's like really small, so I always just say Dallas. But I'm from Roy City, Texas, and my high school was predominantly white, so I was like a very big minority there in comparison to like my HBCU where predominantly African American. And so I think the main difference that I saw was not necessarily access to information about voting, but like how easy it was to share information about voting in my high school in comparison to like at my HBCU, because there's just a lot more red tape at Hampton. Things have to be done a certain way. They follow very specific chains of command. So like if I wanted to set up a table in the student center, I can't do that. Like I have to let them know weeks in advance, get it approved, get it sponsored. So whereas in high school, you know, if we wanted to set up a table, you just set up a table and you do what you need to do. So I think that was the main difference that I saw. Yeah.
I would say for me, I went to early college high school. So it was like my high school was in a community college. So they will always have different events. So like I registered to vote on campus at my high school. So they always had like different events about voting, voting education, kind of similar to what Aaliyah said. Like coming to Hampton, like at the time it was pretty strict when it came to like events and like just putting on things. Like you have to like let them know in advance and then they have to approve. It's just this whole process. But this is my second year and I haven't really heard much on voting and like giving out information on voting. I just remember this one girl last year hearing about her. She put up a table or something like that, and like she was approached and like they kind of just shut her down. So that was the only time I heard something about voting. So that's really the difference.
And I would also say like when I was in high school, people kind of like blew it off. Like obviously we're younger, most people weren't eligible to vote, but like you're trying to get people who are 18 registered. And it could be an age thing, but I just feel like there's also like a bigger like want or desire for information about voting at Hampton than I've experienced anywhere else from the student body.
I also feel like because we don't have that much access to it, a lot of people just talk about it a little bit more than like in high school because it was right there. Like, you knew you can just register to vote, but at Hampton, it's not that easy. Or just to get information on campus, a lot of people.
So could you talk to me a little bit about why you think that you both mentioned like some of the difficulty of mapping on your campus, like getting the process or getting that kind of information? Why might that be?
Well, like I'm a second year, so like I got the last year of the past administration. Like we got a whole new president. The past president was president for about 48 years. And so he was older, a little bit more conservative. But I also think just the history of Hampton, like the time it was created, was during a time we were just coming out of slavery. And so like the whole school was based on kind of assimilating into this society. So just a lot of things on campus, like a lot of rules we have, some people may feel like is anti-Black, but at the time it was to make sure that we were able to assimilate into society, get jobs and things like that. But now we're in a different time, so we're trying to move out of that. And so the new administration is way more open and way more like understanding of that. And he's trying to bring back the HBCU experience. But sorry, I forgot the question.
No, you're answering.
Okay, I'm answering it. Yeah. So I feel like it's that, like, you know, him coming from a different time, the new president is a little bit younger, so he just understands that. So I feel like that's why it was a little bit more harder. And just like HBCUs are very like not stuck in our ways, but we're very prideful. We have a lot of like traditions that we like to keep. And so like just understanding like different organizations on campus, like at our school, like each org has like their own week. So like, and they put it in the calendar beforehand. So like, you really have to, if you want to put on an event during their week, you should get their like permission and things like that. So it's like just very traditional. It's not a bad thing. It's just, that's just the way.
Yeah, well, I'm a senior, so I've been there for 4 years. So like to echo off of what Bleu said, yeah, it's like very political, like type of environment. Like our past president, he was actually the person who brought Hampton from an institution to a university. So he's very like, by the book, this is how we're gonna do things, this is how I want things. Like he likes a clean cut look, and like things have changed in the past 48 years. You know, everything's not so clean and cut. So yeah, there's just a lot of things that, you know, I personally didn't think like made sense about things that we did. I'm like, why do we have to do that? And you know, some people are just like, because I said so. And the thing that I like about our new president is like, it's not just because I said so. It's like, here's why we're doing it like this. And if you still don't think that's good, like, let's talk about it. But yeah, as far as putting on events being difficult, like we said, like every organization has a week, and these weeks are determined like way in advance. You want an event during their week or a table during their week, you have to get like a letter from their president saying it's okay. And some people just don't want to go through that trouble, especially like with CVP. Like we're currently not a registered on campus organization, so we're not allowed to do anything on our own. We can't have our own. We can't have tables. We can't have like events. We have to have another organization sponsor it. So like for us, it's the Political Science Club. They'll sponsor our tables and things like that. But yeah, I think it really just comes down to tradition and things just being done the old way. And I think a lot of that came out of like fear and just wanting to fit in, especially like when you think about Black people who are coming out of slavery and just trying to navigate that new space. That's a lot of like how we did things. Like at an HBCU, well, our HBCU, for example, like business school students aren't allowed to have locks, which is very odd considering it's like a HBCU and it's a cultural hairstyle. So like those are the type of things that we're fighting against. But like the president sees that as, or the old president was like, well, like if you walk into a job interview, they might not hire you. So we're trying to prepare you for that. And so his approach was more like trying to teach us how to fit into those spaces, and the students more want to learn how to like make those spaces include us. And so that's kind of where the push and pull is. And so like that's currently the like what we're navigating now with this new president.
Talk about candidates bringing candidates on campus. Action groups and run for.
Are you saying like, do we have conversations about like who's running like outside?
Yeah, I mean,
like
when I went undergraduate, you only for governor one day, a senate.
Oh yeah, we have that.
Oh, are you saying like some? Yeah, I have one in my class.
I have one of them.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of. I have one in my class. Shout out to Arthur. He had an internship at the Capitol over the summer, but he's very proactive on campus. Like, yeah, we have a lot of those. But we do have like it's called the Big Three. So for SGA, it's the president, the vice president, and the student representative, the student trust
to the board of trustees.
Yeah, the student representative to the board of trustees, and they like kind of are the bridge between administration and the students. And so like whatever concerns the students have, like they'll go to administration, because it's very hard to like get to the administration. Like I don't know about you, but I've never like really talked to the administration. Like they never came to talk to us about anything like that. So it's very hard to get to them. So the student representative, that's their job. But it's, you know,
these are just to give historical. And all like right, board of trustees or the white president, and so like some of the ideas. Because something that was right. This guys are training that panel with to be on it, right? Because I imagine that you think about being an issue on your campus, but it is, you know, navigate those. It's a deal. You want to say good?
Yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say.
No, okay. I don't think I'm gonna get it going. So, just going ahead, like, so again, it's like, how have you been navigating this space, right? Because like, and things, and how you know spaces, how you made.
Yeah, so I would say that one thing that I have really learned, or my biggest takeaway, is like how to get to yes from being at Hampton, because it's like, you know, at Hampton things happen and you can only do so much. It might make you feel stuck, but it's like as I have gotten like older over the years, I'm like that happens a lot. Like you might be in situations or places where you feel like you can't speak out about a certain thing or can't say something, but it's like there's always a way around it, and sometimes it's just finding power in people who have like the freedom to speak up about it. And so one thing that I do a lot, which is a little bit manipulative, but it's like if I have a problem, I try to make someone understand why it's also their problem. And then they're like, you know what, you're right. We should do something about this. I'm like, yeah, we should. But like, you're gonna go in there and say it. And then I'll just like back you up. And so that's really how I've been able to like get stuff done. You know, I work with a lot of clubs, political science club, NAACP, just like linked up with the pre-law society. So it's like, you know, you got to find your avenue, and like, you know, one door doesn't get you where you need to go. Like there's another door around the corner that just might have been left open. So yeah.
So I'm just really starting to get involved on campus. Last semester, the spring semester is when I joined the CVP. And so that's when like the ideas of like civic engagement came up. And that's when I learned about Hampton and like how hard it is to like get an event done on campus. So now I'm a part of the Senate. We just part of the Senate now. We just got done. Yeah. So hopefully like yeah, it is. Yeah. So hopefully like we're able to pass bills and resolutions that will give more civic engagement on campus, so like it can stay for like a long time.
I think to just, you know, into some what you is the reason I think that you are the boom in African American entrepreneurship. As you were doctors, black lawyers, judges, for the most HBCU, they've been able to navigate these spaces, right? And so there are life lessons by accident, right? I like to say that like 10 state degrees, this, you know what I mean? In order to survive there, you need to become an activist, right? Like what you're describing is like the life skills that you're learning because of the environment you're finding yourself in and navigating very well. I have another question to the audience. Anyway, you're talking national. I got you specific data. We can talk things.
And I just want to add something to what you just said. Like, even though like it is hard, like doing stuff on campus or like just figuring out how to actually do, I do feel like it's helping me like understand like how to work with people, because you're gonna work with people that you may not agree with, you may not like. So it's giving me that lesson. I'm really like dealing with it like right now. So it's really, I feel like it's really a good lesson for me, like going out into the real world, because you're not gonna always like work with people that are on the same page as you. So you gotta learn how to, you know, maneuver certain situations.
Yeah, definitely. I think that a lot of Hampton students, like I don't want to say we complain, but like, you know, like I said, we feel sometimes stuck because like, you know, we want to do these things and we see other schools doing them and then they're like, you know, no, y'all can't do that. And it isn't until like you actually have to like apply those skills that you realize it. Like for me, I interned at the White House this summer. And so that was like my first internship. And so I was like in a space with like people who thought very different from me. And, you know, it was easier to navigate those situations or find like the most professional way to go about it, or how to deal with, you know, being shut down and being like, okay, but I still need to get this done. And so I think that while it is a struggle, it's like an important struggle to have to go through.
And lastly, our new administration is really good. Like they're very like open to like, you know, advocating.
Our new president was a student at Hampton himself.
So
actually,
like,
I'm pretty sure he was under our when he
Yeah.
went there, our last president was still president. So like he fully, and his wife too. So he's like, I get it. Like I get what you're talking about. I know it needs to change. So like he was like really proactive in changing a lot of things, just like that he was like didn't like when he was a student. That's still happening. So that was nice. Yeah.
So in that vein, like talk to me a little bit about like what you believe is moving. Got a new administration, which is huge. But what else is like moving the needle when it comes to like student engagement and like to more this year, what do we do more of to help that?
I think.
Sorry to put you out there.
I think that what's really moving the needle forward, honestly, is like opportunities for students at HBCUs. I think that this year I've seen like the most HBCU students with internships this summer, like Hamptonian students with internships this summer, and like the amount of knowledge and just like passion that people come back to their school with about things that they're like, hey, this is an issue and we need to change it. It really gets them like amped up, and so like access to those opportunities like drive passion, and then that's what we see people, you know, really getting the skills also that they need to make that change happen. So like, yeah, like for me personally, working with the Office of National Drug Control Policy this summer, I didn't know that drugs were that big of a problem here. And I didn't know that there were so many like simple things that we could do to help. And so it's like, I never would have known that though, if that opportunity hadn't been presented to me. And as far as I know, like I was the first Hamptonian to intern with the White House. So it's like, if that had happened before, like they could have been doing things to be more proactive on campus. And I definitely think that that's something that like other organizations can do, just like make sure you go out of your way to reach those students on those campuses. Yeah, I did. I actually brought Campus Vote Project to Hampton. So 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah, basically, I agree with Aaliyah, just having those resources, because I feel like a lot of times we don't get certain opportunities, so when you get those opportunities, like you learn your passion, you find it, and so it makes you want to like share with everyone. And then on campus is also like, one thing I do like about the environment is everyone's doing something, and then they're going to push you to do something. They're going to push you out your comfort zone in a good way. If they see your potential in something, they see your passion, they're going to be like, you need to do that, and I'm going to help you get in it. And like, so that's what I like about it. So everyone's like moving, everyone's trying to do something. Everyone wants everyone else to do something to like, you know, work with advocacy and stuff.
I think it's important to like consider dignity, and you're talking about like a person, right? And I started like doing the work, right? But the conversation about like my life, right? When it comes to that we do the Campus World Project, and so the program that I run is actually called Legacy, and I've had the privilege and one drive around the country. I'll be saying one more, right? I was on Grantland's campus a few months ago, and like to just the history of Grantland and like, oh, this happened there, or it was accepted by any measure. But I've been able to go around and also get the experience of different HBCU students and their administrators and what that culture is like, and how like it's literally a fight yearly to keep their doors open, right? And so like when it comes to civic engagement, it's not like they don't care. Past that, like it's their lifeblood, right? Like it's how they keep the doors open. And so like being able to talk to students like this and that kind of work, I pride myself on being the guy in the room that says like, oh yeah, what about HBCUs? And don't just show up and like think you're gonna be rid of stuff. Don't like think you got all the answers. Because no, they've been doing this, has been doing it, you just didn't know about it, and that's different, right? It's not a lack of things happening, it's a you know things what's happening, and now that you know what I'm saying, you need to be helpful in that space, and not like patronizing. Organization. I'm not gonna name it. Probably could. Don't name names. We're recording. I'm not gonna name names. And so, but with that said, like, you know, I have tons of experience when it comes to like what works at different HBCUs and like people you can talk to and things like that. And so we're gonna open it up to questions about like maybe life on an HBCU or what's like the work with in civic engagement. And oh, questions. Okay, cool. Usually I have to talk longer before I answer one. All right, go ahead.
Thank you guys for coming to speak. I truthfully, up until now, I hadn't had the chance to talk to like kids specifically. And it's really like for me, like listen to guys and things. And I wanted to ask, I know you guys touched a lot on like review on this, how like the new president is much more progressive this year. But are there still any like points of contention or like what are the issues that I know like where there's been a lot of issues for administration, and I kind of wanted to like the comparison between the two.
That's a really good question. I don't think that I've like we just started classes like 2 weeks ago actually, so we're still like, you know, trying to feel it out, give things time, see how it's going. But there's one particular rule that we had in our handbook last year that I don't know if it changed or not because I actually haven't read the handbook yet. But Hampton students aren't allowed to protest on campus. And additionally, you're not allowed to post on social media in any way that paints the university in a negative light. So whenever we have problems that we want to complain about, it usually falls on like we don't like we'll complain to administration, but like they're the ones who have to do something about it, and they're not going to do something about it unless they like have to. So, you know, my mom's always like, y'all should call the news. I'm like, Mom, I need to get this degree. I can't call the news. So, yeah, so that's something that I would definitely like to see change, because I just feel like as like young leaders, like how are we supposed to learn those skills for the future if we can't even do it like on our own campus? So.
And to be fair, like they have a long history of bucking up against that rule, which is why that rule is so stringent at this point, right? And so like 2017, when Mike Brown first popped off, like it was a thing on Hampton's campus, right? And prior to that, in the 60s, right, there were, I was just reading about this, about 60 students who protested singing Negro spirituals for the entertainment of white folk, which was a huge problem, as you could imagine, right? And so they just stopped singing those spirituals, walked out, and there were like 300 of them on Hampton's campus, like protesting this. And the administration, who was white at the time, cracked down really hard and expelled a lot of students, suspended a lot of students, and like, that's why that rule is hard as it is. And so like, you know, just some historical context of like, again, they're dealing with stuff that like, when you think about like how Black people are dealing with stuff, like that is institutionalized, they're giving you a microcosm of like what that looks like on their campus. I think that there was a hand here and then I'm coming around. Go for it.
Yeah.
So SGA, oh, that's a good question. Cause like we have a really small campus. So like the odds are if you're in SGA, whether that's Big Three, the Senate, or either any of the caucuses. So we have like men's caucus, women's caucus, and now LGBTQ plus caucus. Like you're in, you're like in something else. So like there's a lot of overlap. So like the civic engagement, as far as like SGA, like you might be like SGA is doing civic engagement, but like that person's also over the poli-sci club. So poli-sci club is doing civic engagement. So we have a lot of that overlap. So I wouldn't say like the effort is 100% like just SGA, but like they do lead a lot of our initiatives and they're pretty like impactful on campus. Cause like we said, they're the bridge for us between like us and administration. So like you have a problem, tell it to SGA or a senator will write a bill on your behalf and then, you know, kind of try and work its way up.
They have like a lot of events for the students, but I don't know about any events when it comes to voting specifically.
Yeah, and we also like, you know, COVID, we were home 2 years, I think, because we like fall semester we were there, and then spring semester we were home, and we were home the whole next year. And then last year we came back, but like we weren't allowed to do stuff really on campus because of COVID protocols. So this is like our first year really being like back and yeah. So.
Go ahead. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, we're definitely still at HBCU. Like regardless of like our administration, like we're still at HBCU. So we still have football games, the marching band. Like our band is really like that. Like we got like yeah, like
I was in the band. We went to Rome, played for the Pope. We were in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade last year. Yeah, like that.
We got one of the top bands in HBCU. Like so, our major advancers like. Everything about HBCU. Like we're still at HBCU. Like our culture is still there. We still party like HBCU. We still have events. Like it's still an HBCU feel. I also just think like also for me it's my second year. So I came back when COVID protocols were still going on. But with this new administration, like there's a lot more things. Like COVID, we still are very cautious about COVID, but you know, we're able to do a lot more. So like we have different events, different things like that. So it definitely still has that HBCU traditions and the things that we do, but it was just the past administration. Some things was like, it was mostly like appearance wise, mostly like, oh, you have to be in business pro, like, which is like understandable because, you know, you have to learn how to dress when you go into certain environments. But like things like, oh, business people can't really wear locks or wear their hair out, things like that. Like, but our HBCU traditions are still there.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the heart of the HBCU culture comes from like the students and what we do socially to interact. Because like Bleu was saying, like on the rules side, things are very strict. And, you know, like even business pro, like what we're wearing right now, we would fail our class. This is not business pro, right? So like they're very specific. This was business casual. So very specific on business pro. My freshman year, I wasn't even allowed to take my final because I was wearing pants and not a skirt. So like stuff like that, you know, it can be pretty crazy, but like we make up for it like in how we interact as students. So we have things that are for us. So like for specifically Hampton, like we have 12 to 2s, you get dressed up, you know, like your best fit, you know, everyone just comes and we just have those 2 hours to ourselves to like just enjoy being, you know, not restricted by any rules that might be put in place like by our school or by what our school thinks society wants to see from like young Black professionals. And then we have fried chicken Wednesdays. Soul food Sunday. Well, it's on Thursday now, which I don't know why he did that.
No, we have soul food Sunday now.
Yeah, but fried chicken Wednesday got moved to Thursday. I don't know why he did that. But that's something to look forward to, you know.
Fish Friday, we have seafood boil. So like we still have the food.
Yeah, so we
still have our food and not all that.
Yeah, food. And then we have like Greek life. So we have a full yard this year with the Divine Nine. So that's super exciting. And everyone has their own days that they dress up. So like I'm SG Row, well, Sigma Gamma Row. And so we dress up on Thursdays and, you know, the Kappas dress up with us. So things like that really tie us together. And then I also think like I won't speak for the whole campus, but like for me personally, like knowing the history of my campus like helps me a lot. Like just respect like that, even though I might not agree with the rules, that there might be like a higher purpose to them. Because like at a lot of HBCUs, you don't walk on the grass, right? I don't know if y'all ever heard that.
Oh, yeah,
but
big deal.
Yeah, big deal. You don't walk on the grass. And I didn't know why. And then when we take like a University 101 class, so you have to learn about everything about the university. And there's this really, really big patch of grass in front of one of the dorms. And someone was telling a story about how there was a lot of slaves on Hampton's campus. We actually have Emancipation Oak, and that's where like the Emancipation Proclamation was read to the slaves and they were free for the first time. So yeah, on this patch of grass, it was like all the slaves had to stay in one dorm, which this dorm is still open, people still live in it. And one night it was like really, really cold and there wasn't enough like beds for all of them. So like the men agreed to sleep outside on the grass and the women were inside, and in the morning like they had all died. And so like stuff like that is like, oh, we don't walk on the grass here, but it's like people die here. So like
it's
we don't
really
do that.
Like,
Right. So or like even like the Greeks have plots, like you don't go to the plots unless you're Greek, because like obviously it's like, you know, people feel like, you know, we earned our letters, but like the historical significance of what people had to go through to create these organizations. So yeah, that's what I would say is how we like keep our, you know, our HBCU spirit alive. Like in spite of the rules, we still have our own things that are special and sacred to us.
Did I see your hands over here? I wanted to make sure that I was, okay, go ahead.
What is your perspective saying? I prefer the White House. Are you able to respect that kind of?
Yeah, so one thing people keep saying to me is like, you sound like you worked in a legal office. And I'm like, thank you very much. But yeah, I think it just really changed the way that I approach problems, because like some things that we think are like the end of the world, it's like it's actually not the end of the world. And then some of the things that we're arguing about on a national level, it's like there's so many more things that deserve our attention. And so I think for me, what I learned is like how much to give and take from situations and knowing like where that limit is. And then that's something that I've really tried to like share with the students on my campus. So, you know, like us not having a table at this event doesn't have to stop the work that we're trying to do, right? And like not everything's worth fighting with the administration about. Like if we want to start a garden, we can start a garden. We don't have to fight with everybody. Or like, you know, there's also like understanding that there's a way to solve problems, right? So we don't like, for example, we can't protest. Like we don't have to go outside with signs and stuff to like get our message across. Like if everybody in this campus writes a letter and like messes up the president's email because he can't see what he's supposed to be working on because all he sees is students' complaints, like that's going to have an impact. So I definitely think, I think, I mean, no one's done it yet, but like, that's really, but yeah, I think that my time at the White House really helped me like understand like just that there's different ways to navigate, and doing it like on a small scale, like it still can have like the same impact. Like there's not big ways to solve big problems and small ways to solve small problems. Like you can intertwine.
Yes.
The White House University, you can protest that actually work in a better environment. That was at Hampton University when they were protesting.
Yeah.
very aggressive there. It was also a very good experience. We had 5 gallons of buckets outside.
We did. We were, so one thing about HBCUs, even in spite of our rivalry with Howard, like we're all one, like, you know, HBCUs support HBCUs. So like when that happened, we were like, you know, obviously not right there beside them, but we were like, what do you guys need? We'll send you water, we'll send you stuff. Like we were signing their petitions, we were reposting their things. Like it became like, it wasn't a Howard problem, it was an HBCU problem, because like we all have that problem. Like these campuses are old, the dorms, they need to be updated, but like they're not doing that. Like my dorm was built like 1888 that I'm staying in right now. Like Rosa Parks works there and everything. Like it's old. And until this year, it didn't have AC. And it's like, I would like some air conditioning, you know? That'd be nice. So like we understood what they were going through, obviously not to the extreme, because you know we didn't have ceilings falling in on us while we're sleeping, but like that's a very serious issue and your students deserve better. And so yeah, we definitely like stay up to date on what other people are going through. And it actually, seeing students like mobilize on other campuses helps us better understand how we can help on our campus. And our administration actually agreed to update the dorms at our school because they were scared we were going to do what Howard did. So those type of changes just can come from like other campuses just getting involved and stepping up.
How many of you all have siblings? Okay, so think of HBCUs like siblings. They can talk about other HBCUs. You cannot. Does that make sense? I cannot. I've never went to an HBCUs. Like I can't, you know, like that's why I have to be bipartisan. You know what I mean? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, and then you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think
that's a great
question. That's a good question.
Like, are you saying traditions or the way that things are ran?
whatever
To non-HBCUs?
whatever you think is correct. If that has been advocacy space, like very loosely speaking, that makes sense.
I don't know if there's necessarily anything that I would think that like can come from an HBCU to other spaces, but I think that what I would say is like when you see Black people or African American students outside of HBCU spaces trying to still stay connected to their culture, that you respect that like it's their culture. Because I feel like, especially like nowadays, especially like cultural appropriation, appreciation of that line being so skewed, we like sometimes don't understand that it's like everything's not for us, you know? So I think just like knowing, and then also doing research, like, you know, because you never know, you might end up on an HBCU campus, like teaching, presenting, and something like that. And it's like, but now y'all aren't going to walk on the grass, right? So like, you know, just like doing that research and just knowing like why we might do the things that we do, and like understanding how when you're in those spaces that might contribute or change or alter that experience.
I would just say allow Black students and like people of color to have their safe places on campus to, you know, indulge in their culture and give them like an opportunity to showcase that to the school without, like she said, feeling the need to join it. Just give them that space to be them.
Can I say something that's also going to probably make a few of you uncomfortable? Okay, so buckle up. You all right? Everybody's good? Okay. 1, don't ignore your Black student population. Don't assume that they are not civically engaged because you're afraid to talk to them. The thing that's in you that says that like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, I don't want to be considered racist, so you disengage, that's racist. Don't do that. So have the conversation and deal with whatever is in there. Deal with that uncomfortable feeling, because there is a Black population on your campus that is very active, has a very rich history. There's probably things that they've gone through on your campus historically that you know nothing about, right? That would shock you. but you haven't had those conversations yet, right? And so like, there's not really a need for you to go outside of where you are currently to find what you're looking for when it comes to actual engagement with your fellow students. That makes sense? All right, who got the next question? Go for it.
I was curious, is there a broader like around that org during the week, or is it more so we're going to make sure you have your space?
It's like basically each week, like if org gets their week, so they have different events surrounded by their organization. Like say, for instance, SGA week is coming up, so they're gonna have different events surrounding things that SGA does, like talking to the students about certain things, or like if a Greek has their week, they'll have different events.
Yeah, so it's like an everyday thing. Like the reason you can't have events during their week is because they have something planned every single day, and like a lot goes into putting together a week because like you have to decorate the entire student center. It takes hours. So like it's kind of more of like a respect thing. Like people took the time to like really plan out these events, and like we're instead of like having everyone just trying to do stuff all over the place, like here's your week, do your stuff in your week, and then you can still do stuff outside of that. Some weeks aren't assigned, and so you can like still just do whatever, but it's really just a respect thing. And I mean, I've only ever asked someone to do something during their week once. They didn't sign the paper, but it's okay. We just didn't have time.
I want to say that like one of the things that may be able to be transmitted is like a culture of respect. It's communal, right? In a sense. And so like, I think that like the question that you're getting at is like, is there a larger camaraderie around the student body? And the answer to that is yes, right? But it's not something that like you would articulate because it's baked into the culture. Does that make sense? And so like the culture at HBCUs is very communal and is very about like, how can we do better together, right? Like, how can we support you to do X, Y, and Z? And so it's not about like I'm sure there's rivalries, right? Because we're people. But it's not really about like my issue is the most important issue. It's about like how can we respect one another on that campus? And so like just because I know what you were kind of getting at. I went to a PWI, and so like everybody is doing everything on everybody's thing, and it's like respect is not a thing. You know what I'm saying? Mainly because there's no consequences to disrespect, which culturally that's a problem. But that's neither here nor there.
It's just giving like the organization and those people their time to shine. Like we're very like supportive of each other. So like we're gonna show up to every event that they're having. Like regardless of like there's two different, say SLP and SRT, like they're on two different sides. Like they're like two, huh? Oh yeah.
We have our student leadership program, and then we have our student recruitment team, and those two kind of rival just because like they're really big organization, and one is like I said on the recruitment side, and then one is like on campus with the current students, and they fight a little bit, like not fight, but like they like siblings, like I'm better than you, but at the end of the day, like SLP will be at SRT's events, and SRT will be at SLP's events.
Just show up for them.
I think we have time for like maybe one or two more questions. Go for it.
So the bomb threats to the that happened early in the year. You talked a little bit, and of course the that happens here. What's the conversation about that on your campus?
Yeah, so we actually did receive one of those bomb threats last year. We were one of the campuses. And not at all to like discredit the severity of the situation, but like I was asleep when that came through. So I didn't see it till I woke up. But I know a lot of my friends were like in class, because that was finals week for us. So they were in class. And it was just like a lot of uncertainty, because it's like, you're in class, it's time to leave, and it's like, no, you have to stay in the building. No, like all the doors are locked, and, you know, kids were stuck in those buildings for like hours waiting to get cleared. They were hungry. People were calling their parents, like, because we didn't have any information also. We just knew we weren't allowed to leave the rooms and the shelter in place. And so I think by that point there had been a bunch of bomb threats like at other schools. So like we knew about it, and like none of those like, you know, resulted in an actual bomb going off or anything. But I think for me personally, it was just like the realization is like, why is someone doing this to us, you know? And it really makes you just feel unsafe in a space where you're supposed to feel safe. And it also brings you back into reality. I think a lot of times at HBCUs, it's a bit of a culture shock once you leave that campus and realize you're still a minority, because you're just so used to being around people who look like you and who have similar experiences as you. So like to have those threats come onto your campus and like throw you out of that little bubble unexpectedly is like really mentally and physically like shaking in a way that I don't think other people really understand.
Yeah, basically what Aaliyah said, I was in my dorm, so I came back from breakfast, luckily, so I didn't have to stay in the cab for like hours. But I just came back to my dorm, and then we were just down in lockdown. Everybody was just kind of confused what was going on, and honestly, it's a very serious situation. But like, if you know Black people, they'll make a joke out of every situation. They was on Twitter like, because it was Fried Chicken Wednesday, so it was like,
this better be cleared up by 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, I guess that's our way of just making like light of a situation that's like kind of serious. So let's make jokes like, this better be cleared by Fried Chicken Wednesday, or like just making jokes. But it's really a serious situation, because it was one specific dorm that had to be evacuated, because I think they mentioned that dorm or something. And so I knew a girl, upperclassman, that was in that dorm, and they was, you know, taking it very seriously. So I feel like the people in that dorm probably were, you know,
they weren't joking.
They weren't laughing. They probably felt more like unsafe than the rest of the campus. But yeah, it's just a sad situation, because like she said, like we're on HBCU, so we feel pretty safe. Like even when it comes to police officers on our campus, like the security, like they're mad cool. Like they, you know, we can talk to them, like we feel safe around them, but it just shows like, wow, like people still feel this type of way. But
yeah, and I also think that like for Hampton specifically, it was finals week, and it was like right before Thanksgiving break, I think so. It was a break coming up, and so the call came in like while people were still in class. Like I was in class, and then I left to go back to my dorm. So like all the finals that were taken that day had to be retaken, regardless of what grade you made, regardless if you passed or failed. You had to retake your final. They weren't allowed to count any of the scores from that day. And so like academically, that also impacted students. Like obviously, you know, you should still know your information, but when your mind was like, I'm gonna dump it on this test and I'm going home, like that was just, and then we didn't find out until like a week into our break. And then they were like, hey, everyone needs to retake the final. And so that's just like another way that the situation really impacted the campus.
I feel like that just goes to show, like even after the bomb threat was clear, it's okay, you guys can leave, whatever. People still have, some professors were still making students go back to class. But I just feel like that just goes to show that even like we still have to keep going. Like we can't really like let those situations stop us. Like we still have to keep going. Like there's still a bigger mission. Not that they didn't take it serious, but they knew like, all right, y'all, like this happens. This has been happening. We got to keep going.
All right. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank y'all so much. My sister will be proud. My sister graduated from Hampton. What year did she graduate? Yeah, okay, yeah.
Do you know what, like,
if it's okay, I was about to say, I knew you were about to say, okay, if it's not Onyx, then.
All right. And so, thank you all. Know what's
I can do that too.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
We'll do that.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so we're going to take a brief period just to kind of network and take a break. I know we've kind of been back-to-back eating luncheon sessions. So at 3 p.m., we'll start back at our next breakout session. So on your schedule, there was a session A, but that session is no longer happening. So it's just sessions B and C, which is the INSOLVE session and the how local issues can, or how national issues can affect you at the local level, the reproductive rights session. So we'll come back at 3. The INSOLVE session will be in this room, and upstairs in 175 will be the reproductive rights session. So yes. Yes.